And we're back with Legends of Lake Howell. This month, our guest is Cezar Arvelo. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So in your bio, it says that you are a senior graphic designer. What is a senior graphic designer?
Well, not quite junior, not quite creative director.
Right, right.
But yeah, no, it's, so I focus on, graphic designers just focus on creating assets, but as a senior graphic designer, I'm doing a little bit, some managerial work plus designing. So for my job specifically, the managerial stuff comes from managing, let's say, 3D artists or other creatives or other designers that need to like put together a 400-page style guide, but I'm managing it. So, it's just kind of putting pieces where they need to go, doing some design work myself. So that's kind of where the senior comes in. But I also freelance as well. So when I do my own projects and my own work, I'm kind of everything, right? I am the manager, the creative director, the creative. So I wear all hats, basically.
So you mentioned some words here, and we want to make sure that our viewers are able to follow us.
Yeah.
Like assets and style guide. What's an asset?
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Let me tone down the lingo. Basically, an asset it's a piece of creative that will go into a book, and the book is called the style guide, or we can call it a brand guide or a brand Bible. And it's basically like, so I work on Transformers. That's like my 9 to 5. So on, let's say, a certain segment of Transformers, let's say the retro Transformers, where you got like the Autobots and Decepticon icons and all those t-shirts you see at like the mall or let's say Target, Walmart, it all has a certain look. So we have to categorize everything in that book, let's say a badge, a background, a pattern, all of those things are assets. And we just kind of organize them, and then once that book is done, we send it out into the world, so people that have the license rights to use those assets, they make bed sheets and t-shirts and posters and whatever they want.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's like the main thing.
Now, you've had an opportunity to work on some amazing projects, Transformers, Star Wars, Frozen, even in the professional leagues such as the New York Jets, the New York Knicks. Do you have a favorite project or something that's more memorable than others? And I don't want to say favorite because I don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah. No. Man, honestly, my favorite project has nothing to do with like any of the corporate work. My favorite project was actually, it's what led me to move from New York City to LA. I was working on a cartoon on the subway every day to work for 3 years. A friend of mine, he was helping me doing some of the writing, some of the storytelling. I was doing all the character designs and putting together this pitch Bible so that we can, just start shopping it around, showing it to people. And after 3 years of making this, I was able to submit my cartoon in a film festival. And out of 200 submissions, my friend and I, we were picked to be top 7. So we flew down to Miami, we pitched the show in front of this panel of judges, like so-and-so from Cartoon Network and so-and-so from Nickelodeon, and we actually won the competition. So I didn't win anything specifically. They were just like, we're just going to open the door for you and give you a chance to pitch this in person in LA to the networks. So we're like, cool. And within like a month or two later, we went out to LA, we started pitching the show to all these networks, and the same week that I was out there, I got a call from NBC Universal, and they were like, we want to buy your show. And I thought that was it. This was in 2016, 2017. And I was like, this is it. This is my big break. I'm going to be a cartoon creator. And, that was always the big dream. And so I packed my bags, quit my job, I put all my furniture on the street, and I was like, I'm moving to LA. And so that's what I did. I couch surfed with some friends in LA, and everything was moving super fast. They set me up with like an entertainment lawyer, and they were like, oh, this guy represented the writer for the Hunger Games. Now he's your entertainment lawyer. He's gonna, and everything was just happening really fast. In that first month that I was there, NBC, Universal, and DreamWorks Animation, they actually had a big merger. And usually when these big companies merge, they lay off like thousands of people. So that's what happened. The team that was working on my cartoon, they got laid off. And they were just like, here's the rights to your show back. Good luck. Like, have fun. And that was it. And I just had to kind of start from scratch in LA. And the story goes on from there. But that was my favorite project because it just created so much momentum in my life. It created this big adventure where, moved to two different cities. It was just something that I really put all of my energy into and just believed in myself and just went for it.
And it was personal because it was your creative idea. While you don't have a favorite, I have a favorite. Okay. Transformers. So growing up as a kid, Optimus Prime was always my favorite. And they had Transformers the movie. They killed Optimus Prime, and I was devastated. Yeah. But then he came back. So let's talk about your work with Transformers.
Yeah. So, I work for Hasbro.
Yeah.
Been there for 5 years. Touched a lot of brands, but over the last 3 years, I've been focusing just on Transformers. Okay. And the way things work in the entertainment world, whatever I'm working on now, it's actually not coming out for like a year or two later. Okay. So right now, I'm currently working, I can say this because they announced it, but there's a new movie coming out this year called Transformers 1. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say too much, but it's going to be amazing. So I'm working on that. But prior to that, the new Transformers movie that came out, Transformers Rise of the Beast. Mm-hmm. So we work with Paramount Studios. They're working on the actual movie. They're working with the actors and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then what we do over at Hasbro is we focus on the brand, anything that has to do with the branding of the movie. Mm-hmm. So like all of the promotional artwork that you see out in the world for the movie, all of the end cap designs at like Target or Walmart where like, they're gonna be selling the toys. Mm-hmm. Book covers, shirts, magazine covers, posters, logos. Those are the things that I've worked on for the actual movie. And then Transformers is a huge franchise. So they're always working on a movie, but then there's always they call it the evergreen Transformers, where it's the Transformers that, you always see out in the world, like the vintage stuff, the retro stuff. Mm-hmm. So on that piece of Transformers, I'll probably work on some badges, some patterns. Like we're always touching that segment of Transformers. Mm-hmm. And then there's an animated cartoon on Nickelodeon called Transformers Earthspark. And on that, same thing, worked on these style guides, worked on posing out character art. So all of those characters that you see on the toy boxes, mm-hmm. me and my team will literally like pose them out, and we'll send them to the studio and be like, here's the poses that we're thinking for this character on this toy box. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they say, great, that looks great, looks just like the character's personality, once they approve that, we take that and we polish it up. We'll put final finishes on the character art, and they take that piece of art and they start using it everywhere. Promotional posters, toy boxes. So that's 3 segments. So that's what I do. So, and you mentioned that it's very corporate. Yeah. So how much creative control do you have in terms of, we'll use the Transformers as an example. Yeah. Do they tell you just work at free will, or do they give you like some design concepts or ideas, or like a framework that you have to work with? So every movie has a style, Every cartoon has a style. So once we establish like what is this style, like we have to read the scripts early. You know, for Transformers: Rise of the Beasts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have to read the scripts and know that this movie takes place in. Oh, this is embarrassing. Peru and Brooklyn.
Okay, right, yeah.
So it was like, oh, cool. We can take different things from Brooklyn from the 80s, the 90s, like graffiti, like a lot of, you know, the time period, you know, scenes, the textures, the colors. And then from Peru, it's like, okay, the Mayan calendar, you know, all of that kind of jungle aesthetic. So we had all of that knowledge before, and we know, okay, we can work within this framework. But after that, you know, I'm really blessed to be able to like just roam free. They just kind of give me free range, and they're like, just come up with cool design systems, come up with cool posters. If I just create things, and if they like it enough, they're like, great, we'll throw it in. We'll use that, you know. And sometimes I'll get lucky and I'll create something that the studio will then want to use, which has happened a couple times, where they're like, hey, can we use that poster that you guys made? And then my, you know, my colleagues will tell me at Hasbro, they're like, hey, you know, they're using your logo, they're using your poster, and that's the best feeling because it just gets, you know, turns into a bigger thing.
So I would imagine that over the years you've had to develop thick skin, which is just the opposite of an artist, because artists are usually like very sensitive about their work.
Yeah.
So here it is that you put in a lot of time and effort into something, and you're like, man, this is great, and then you show it, I guess, to a review board and a committee, and they're like, oh, next.
Happens all the time. Happens all the time. That's part of the business where it's like, you know, artists, they create for themselves first, and the audience can react to it however they want. But at the end of the day, the artist did that for themselves. Designers, they're visual communicators, where they create for the final purpose of what needs to get communicated. And that's the difference. So you can't be too tied to the work, because that's how you start failing as a designer, as a graphic designer. So that's something that, you know, even at the college level, where they try to instill in us, where it's like, hey, just try to, you know, put your creative flair in there, but also try to meet the demands of the client. Like, they know exactly what this is supposed to do. Use your creativity to visually communicate that. It's not just pretty pictures. But yeah, happens all the time. You know, we'll put stuff up at that final level, and it'll get shut down. It happened with, so I worked on Star Wars Episode 9 toy packaging, and it got all the way to the point where J.J. Abrams saw it, the movie director.
Right, yeah.
And I was competing against 10 other people. You know what I mean?
Right,
Someone else got picked. But it's still like an honor to be like, wow, you know, it got all the way to that level. And it definitely motivates you to just want to just be better and, you know, continue developing like that skill set and just, all right, how do I visually communicate this better? And I'm always like challenging myself and, you know, trying to just be a better designer every day. So just part of the job.
How do you get in that creative space? Do you listen to music, or what do you do? Like, what inspires you?
So I have 2 daughters, so they definitely inspire me for sure. Every time I create something, my 6-year-old, she's always like, oh my God, I want to do that. And I'm, you know, can you show me? So yeah, that inspires me to just be better. And also on the flip side, when you have kids, you have to be a master at time management.
Right, yeah.
So I know some creatives that they got to light the candles to be able to work and create. They got to have the perfect setting. I can create through a hurricane. You know what I mean? I've had to train myself to be able to work through noise, work through the interruptions. You know, I can be in the creative flow, and then I start getting tugged on my sleeve from my daughter. You know?
Yeah.
So it took a lot of practice. But some of my tips and tricks is, if I really, really need to get a project done and I have to get in that flow state, I go to a coffee shop. Like, I go to a coffee shop, because it keeps me focused. You know, I don't have to get up and, you know, be distracted by the refrigerator or whatever, or, you know, anybody else. And then I'll try to find music that doesn't have lyrics, has enough of a catchy rhythm where it'll just like trigger something in your brain where the music almost starts drowning out in the background, and then all of a sudden you're just working. That's kind of what I do, or what I try to do, to get in that state. And if I find a song that really hits that little nerve, I'll repeat the song over and over and over again until I finish the project. So that's what I do. Yeah.
You mentioned college. So was this always the plan? You wanted to do something with design? Like,
Yeah.
what did you study? What was your major in college?
So, first of all, shout out to all my mentors, teachers, college professors, high school teachers, because I was always doing fine arts my whole life, up until high school. Drawing, charcoal, traditional artwork. I've definitely been blessed to know that I wanted to do art, some form of art my whole life. I've been drawing since I was 4. But something just kind of clicked when I was a senior, and I was about to go into college. I went to Valencia, and I was like, okay, am I going to be the next Picasso? I don't know. You know?
Yeah.
And I kind of just talked myself into, hey, maybe I should kind of see what this tech side is about and learn some of these programs. And you know, when I was going into college, I had never even seen an Apple product in my life. So I was like, you know what, let me just go and try graphic design. And I was super intimidated. And actually, I sucked, like, all the way up until my last semester. I was a very slow learner. But right in my last semester, everything clicked where finally I was able to manipulate the programs to, you know, like Photoshop and Illustrator to, you know, finalize the vision that was in my head. And I was actually able to take all those years of fine arts and combine it with the design field. So I was actually drawing stuff, even up in, you know, even as of today, I still can draw stuff on paper, scan it in the computer, and then digitally draw on top of that to get a certain look that I'm going for. So I just learned to fall in love with it, and I'm so glad that I picked this career, because as technology has progressed, it's really, like, I've been able to stay relevant as far as how to make money. You know, once you're already used to using the computer a lot and using programs, if something new comes out, you catch on easier or quicker. So yeah, that's really how it's kind of been. But as soon as I graduated Valencia, I moved to New York City. That's where I really started my whole design career. Yeah.
So it seems like you do a lot of work with animation. How did you get on with the projects with, say, the Jets or the New York Knicks?
Yeah. So as soon as I graduated, I moved to New York City. I did not have a job at first. I was working this internship. I was getting paid like $9.70 an hour in New York City.
Oh, man.
So I was borderline just like homeless when I first moved there for like 6-7 months. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to move to New York was I was living in Orlando for 10 years. I was actually born in New York City. I was born in Harlem. But as soon as I was born, my mom moved me to Boston. And I had a childhood in Boston. But then as soon as I turned 13, we moved to Florida. So I really consider Orlando where I was, you know, where I grew up. Teenage years, high school, college, all that stuff. But something in my heart was always calling me about New York City. You know, I never actually experienced it as an adult, and I was like, I gotta just try it out. You know, that fast-paced environment. And I'm really glad that I did that, because it really pushed me to the next level. People over there, especially creatives, like they're unforgiving. Like they look at your work and they're just like, oh, do better, you know? And it was such a shock to my system where I was like, oh, wow, I thought I was good, you know? So I feel like I really leveled up quickly in New York City, and I'm very grateful for that time. But yeah, so when I was in New York City, started with that internship. I was probably only there for like 6 months, and then I went out and job hunted. And at that point, I was looking for anything. And I gotta come clean. I am not a fan of sports. I'm like,
all right.
I'm not. I don't follow it. So it was very ironic that my first real career job out of college was a company that did live events for sports teams. So I was doing stuff for the New York Knicks, New York Jets, New York Rangers. My company did a bunch of live events, and they did something called experiential marketing. So basically what that is like, well, I'll put it in this term. Like, let's say you are trying to throw a party, but you're also trying to sell merch, you're trying to, sell a program. You hire an experiential marketing company to make sure that the environment feels like you. You know what I mean? Like every pillar, every color, every poster, like it has to feel like a branded space where as soon as you walk in, you're like, oh, I know exactly where I am. And that's what we did for all these sports teams. So like the New York Rangers, they won the Stanley Cup one year, and we created something called Hockey House. And we had like little mini games. We had step and repeats, photo opportunities. And I had to design all of that. I had to design the wall graphics. I did for the the Buffalo Bills. I did stadium graphics for the actual Bills stadium. And I basically lied in my interview and said, I love sports. And finally, like when I had the courage 2 years later to be like, guys, I just want to let you know, like, I'm not into sports. Oh, yeah, we knew. We knew from day one. I was like, so why'd you guys hire me? They were like, well, we just wanted a different perspective. We knew that you had other interests, but we wanted to see what you could bring to this world. And I did. I took my job very seriously. Like, I was so grateful just to have, a salary job, and I learned so much with them. The company's called Rooftop 2 Productions. They've been bought out since by a company called Sport 5, but I'm still really good friends with the owners. They're, just like mentors to me as well. So, but yeah, for the Knicks, the Knicks were coming out with a clothing line. It was a collaboration with some fashion designers in New York, and same kind of thing. I did. I was able to brand the store inside of Madison Square Garden. Did some patterns and backgrounds, and they just kind of pasted it on like the shelves. And and then in 2015 they had the All-Star game. And the same thing at a restaurant. I had to brand the entire space. And I did this timeline of all of the New York Knicks All-Stars from, the first one to like the recent. And it was just like wrapped all around the restaurant. We made all of the dining room tables look like mini basketball courts. So just stuff like that. It was a fun time. Yeah, it was awesome.
So let's talk about your experience at Lake Howell High School.
Okay.
All right. So if you could describe your experience, and I say this to everyone that I interview or ask this question, if you could describe your experience in one word, what would that be?
Oh, man. One word.
Or it could be more than one, but your experience.
I'm going to say supported. And I think I'm going to say that because, well, for example, I was in APR every year. And my APR teacher, Miss Mears, she's not here anymore, but she told me, she's like, your GPA is super low. It's like, right? Like, she's like, I don't even think I'm legally allowed to have you in this class. but I'm gonna give you a chance. And just the fact she did that for me, I'm like, great, I can skip gym and be in art all day. Yeah, you know. So that support, you know, even I had a few teachers that were not art teachers that knew that I was into art, and they would always show me their drawings, and they'd be like, hey, check this out, what do you think? So it was just that support where I felt like I always had adults here that had my back, that, you know, they fed whatever I was interested in. And yeah, I always appreciated that about my experience here, for sure.
You mentioned Miss Mears. Who are your favorite teachers, or did you have a favorite subject?
I mean, it's obvious, you know, art. It's gonna be art.
Yeah, yeah.
AP art was my top favorite. Miss Mears, Miss Rivas, obviously. I know he's not here anymore, but Mr. Wilk, he was a great, you know.
Chemistry.
Yeah, like I didn't care for the class.
Right, okay.
But he was creative.
Right,
like,
okay.
Yeah, he was, he actually knew a lot about art as well.
Uh-huh.
And who else? Let me see. Mr. Silverman, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. Those are the teachers I can remember that had an impact on me. Yeah.
All right. So if you could go back in time, maybe to the point where you were making $9 an hour, or that couch that you put on next to the road so you could chase your dream.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time, or even back to high school, and give yourself some advice, what would you say to yourself?
Some advice. I would say invest in Google. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's smart.
I'm gonna be real with you, and this is gonna sound like such a boring answer, but it would probably be financial advice. Really.
Okay.
Because I struggled financially for a long time because I cared more about the art and the creative work that I was doing in my portfolio and my connections and my network, more than actually like bringing in the money or structuring, you know, good deals for myself, or like being smart with how I get jobs. And I've had to learn how to do all that closer to like the middle to like the end of my career. Not end, but you know what I mean, current time.
Yeah.
So I struggled a lot financially, and you know, was never good at like saving money, and just kind of lived for tomorrow. But I was always making great art, and I was always like doing creative stuff, and I always felt like I had that passion just fueling tomorrow. So it would really be financial, and you know, I know a lot of that comes from just what you're taught, your upbringing, your environment.
Right.
My parents were never really that great with money.
Yeah.
But over the years, they have gotten better. Like my mom, she's actually like building, you know, little apartments that she's renting out,
Right.
and like, you know, like I've learned, especially having kids.
Right.
Oh, look, let's get some life insurance.
Right. Yeah.
So we've definitely smartened up and leveled up in that way. But I just feel like it's so important, especially for young kids, especially for artists.
Right.
You know, you always hear that starving artist thing.
Yeah.
It almost brainwashes creatives to think that, oh, I'm just not going to make money in this field.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm just going to be out in the street and be a starving artist like everyone else. But it's
Right.
not true. Like, you
Right.
can make a lot of money as an artist, as a designer, as a creative. But you just have to know how to manage money well, structure creative deals well, and like
negotiate your salaries. You know what I mean? Like right when you get in the door, because they definitely need people like us. They need people like us to keep moving the ball forward, keeping things fresh. So,
and I can understand that, because you're in a field and you're trying to quantify your work, trying to add a dollar value to your creative design, and it's like, hey, how much is this worth? How much is my time worth? And trying to figure out, like, what's the amount there? Right.
It's no, it literally is hard to quantify it, especially after college. Like, you don't know. Like, people are like, oh, I'm doing a logo for $20, but there are professionals charging $1,000 for a logo. And it's really, when it comes to what I do, design work, branding, it's all about experience and confidence. So I think the number one piece of advice is like, get out there. Even if you know in your heart, oh, I'm charging too low for this, doesn't matter. You're still gaining the experience. Get experience as quickly as possible. And then it comes to a point where you're like, oh yeah, you know, you got to pay me $100 an hour for this type of work, or, you know, it's just about gaining the experience. It's about putting yourself out there as much as you can.
Well, I think we're in there. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's a great interview, and I'm looking forward to that Transformers movie.
Transformers 1 coming out September 2024.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.